Yes, I know. Good to see you. Good to have you here.
The big. Awesome. My father's father came from the town of Peterland in Oroville. Awesome. That's what I need. They took him in back in
Is somebody tracking the total amount?
Yeah, I never know. No, it's not like this.
Is somebody tracking the total amount?
Good afternoon, everybody. We'd like to call this meeting into order. It is January 23rd, 2019. If we could have a roll call, please.
All right. Committee Member Imberlin.
Here.
Committee Member Reynolds.
Here.
Committee Member Pittman.
Here.
Committee Member Carter. Here. Chairperson Thompson.
Here. We stand for the pledge, please. Good afternoon, everyone. We just want to recap here. This meeting is a continuation of last week's meeting where we opened up to public comment and we went through all of the presentations for the projects. We postponed the meeting until today to give this committee time to properly review with all the questions that have been submitted and answered to come up with the projects that they feel would be the best fit and time for release of funds. Part of the process that I would like to do today is, since we've already heard from the community here on these projects and whatnot, we're primarily going to be discussing as a committee and just kind of going through the nuts and bolts and negotiating which projects. Part of the benefit, the cons, I'd say the downfall of not having closed sessions, because typically like city council, for example, when we're talking about contracts and budgets and certain things, budgets come out to open session for voting, but especially for contracts, negotiating, for example, with our different unions and whatnot, we get to do that behind closed sessions. My fear, and I hope to not that happen today, is that just because your project does not get funded today does not necessarily mean it's not a viable or a beneficial project for the community. Part of the privilege of serving on this council committee is having the privilege to not only listen to staff for vetted projects, but also to make a decision, a objective decision that would best benefit the community. The downfall of that is potentially some offense today, and I hope that doesn't happen. But I do hope that everybody understands that as a committee, number one, we can't discuss this behind closed session, so we will be deliberating as far as projects and funds for those projects. So what I would like to do to alleviate for some of you who may be sitting in the audience who will not have your project, it will be clear your project won't be funded this round, is I would like to go around from the different committee members here. I would like to hear specifically the projects that, they don't need to go into detail as far as finances at this point, but so that those can leave who may not, their project may not get funded today. I would like to hear from the committee members which projects specifically they'll be looking into today giving funds to. I'll start with myself, and then I would like to go from Mr. Emberlin over to Mr. Pittman. And regarding, again, the projects today that you are looking to get funding for, that you believe qualify in the NOFA. For myself, I'll just communicate there's two main projects that I will be looking to have funding for today, and one of those projects is Stage. The other project is for the Veterans Memorial.
Thank you.
There's 5 more of us.
Or at least 4 more.
Okay. I am looking at Feather River Recreation Park District for the purchase of land surrounding the current activity center. And I am looking at the City of Oroville, Bedrock Park Pavilion. And I will be looking at, I believe it's again the City of Oroville, the fencing guardrail. And I believe that was it.
There you go.
Am I okay? Okay, I will be looking at, agree with Gary, the Feather River Rec Department for the purchasing of the land. I'm also looking at Stage and the City of Oroville for the climber at Bedrock, and possibly the Veterans Memorial.
I'm looking at Feather River Aquatic Center, Stage, Veterans Memorial.
My turn, I guess. Yeah, I'm looking at the Feather River Center project, and I'm looking at the Stage project and the Veterans project. I'd like to add a couple comments, if I may. Is that all right, or?
Sure.
And just because it's my perception, and it kind of helps you as grant applicants to see where we're coming from that perspective. And I'll start with Stage. I think it's a very worthy project. It does enhance the business activity of the downtown business center. It creates a unique historic event center. And I would look forward down the line to the balcony being used. I know it's expensive, but I really look forward to that being in use. Looking at the Veterans Memorial Park, I think this project clearly fits well within the regional strategic recreation plan, and its proximity to the river certainly speaks to that. And it is, even though it's a passive recreational venue, I think that the events and associated things that they have in planning with that particular facility makes it worthy of funding. The City of Oroville's request for the Bedrock Park Pavilion, I think it's a worthy project, and I would like to support it in the future, and I'd like to keep it for consideration, but until we have a new security plan, I'm a little hesitant to fund any more improvements to our parks until we can get our parks back and clear the security, and so that we're all safe and comfortable to use those facilities. The guardrail, I totally agree. That's almost 4 to 5 decades that guardrail's been a problem. The fence along Tenmont Boulevard. I think it's a very worthy project. I would like to see the city see if they can fund that project, and I would add to that for possible reconsideration of funds in the future if we have anything left. I'd also like to see lighting added to that walkway along that path. It's only going to make it nice if it's attractive and well lit. Consequently, that would be a big plus to it. And then my last comment is about the Feather River Center. It's a great example of the partnerships with so many multiple agencies. I applaud them for joining their group hands with the rowing, sailing, and the aquatic rentals into one what they call Feather River Center now, which we all kind of don't quite understand yet, but I think that's a huge shining star for the community and certainly fits within the recreational regional plan, and may even prove to be worldwide venue for a variety of things coming to the future. And I agree that it would be nice to see a motel out there one day, as they're getting that many people visiting that facility and utilizing it for both ecological education and boat rentals and aquatic activities and just the whole myriad of things. And I hope that the training facility, that I believe is called a BISC, is actually put in place. It would be a wonderful thing for this community to have that kind of training out there. So those are my comments, and those are the ones I'm looking at. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Great. Thank you for your comments, everyone. Just for clarification, I saw two projects that were not mentioned. So if you are here today representing Table Mountain Golf or Haven of Hope, I have not heard any committee members at this time who are going to be looking for funds for that projects again at this time. What I did hear, just to kind of move things forward, I heard 4 out of 5 of us mention the Veterans Memorial. I would like to kind of do our best to move through the weeds and just get down to the nitty-gritty. If the chair or the committee is open to it, I'm open to hearing a motion to, if there's that much support for this project, to hear a motion for that to move forward, either fully or partially, depending upon the will of the council.
I motion that we fund the Veterans Memorial Project in full.
And for clarification, that's at the $92,098 number?
Yes.
I would second that.
We have a first and a second. Voting is open. Votes are in. Go ahead.
Motion carries.
Great. Is there a way, Jordan, to update that?
Yeah, spending money.
If you're here for the Veterans Memorial, congratulations. And we can move on with the other items here now. We have, from my memory, have the Feather River Center, Stage, Feather River Recs Department, City of Oroville Pavilion, and also City of Oroville for the railing. Do we want to just go through these one at a time? Before we move to a motion on any monies per se, I would like to hear, again, just kind of maybe as we go through these, what you guys are thinking of as far as partial funding or full funding, just so that we can hear everybody's at, and then from there, potentially come up with some figures that that would seem agreeable to everybody. Let's start with the first one on the top, Feather River Center. Those who wish to see that move forward, could you speak to that, please? That's the Aquatic Center.
Do you want to go Barry first?
Oh, you go ahead.
Could you, Jackie, could you, the request to speak? Screen.
Oh, that's right.
We have Mr. Reynolds, Chair, Mr. Mayor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really think this is a good project. A couple of things I'm concerned with, though, is that they don't own the property and that their lease is only year to year. I would really like to see that upgraded. They really need some stability there. I've been involved in quite a few business dealings where everyone starts out very friendly, and then things can change rather quickly. I'm willing to partially fund that, but I'm certainly concerned about the being on someone else's property. But what a absolute wonderful project.
Mr. Committee Member Reynolds,
Yes, sir.
can you speak to, just for clarification for my sake, which projects of that you're in favor of seeing move forward? I see 3 different sections in that. They have the world-class 2-kilometer 8-lane sprint road. They're looking for $784. The South Bay Community Sailing Center, $85,000, and also the program rental inventory for $344,640.
Well, are we funding these separately, or are we funding the project and then they will distribute their funds?
And actually, you're right. They are looking to get the money in their hands and then distribute as they decide. So,
okay.
You're right. Mr. Member Pittman.
Thank you, Chairman. In fact, I'm in support of what Mr. Committee Member Reynolds said, and I have a dollar amount in mind. I'll wait till the other committee members weigh in on it, but I would hope that in the spirit of this process that I've been involved in the past, that a dollar value less than what's requested would award it to any grant project, that they would come back as soon as possible with a plan to spend those dollars. And our process has been, Mr. Marciniak, has it been like a 30-day request time or something like that? What's been the history of that?
Trying to get the mic on also. So just to kind of clarify what you guys are talking about, they, through the NOFA application, have applied for 3 specific items. And I'll just kind of read them to you so we can hear them.
That's fine, yeah.
The sprint rowing course, $784,259. South Forebay Sailing Center, $85,500. And then expand the programs and rental inventory for $344,640. So to comment to a comment that was made by the chair, if whatever dollar amount, if should you approve something, they need to stay within these 3 categories, or they need to come back with an alternate plan for the committee to reapprove. You can't just say, here's $500,000, divide it up, spend it how you wish. They have applied for 3 very specific things with 3 specific dollars. So you either approve all, or you approve 1, 2, or 3. Okay?
And let me throw another monkey wrench in here. And it was pointed out by one of the advisory members, and that is at least 2 of these projects will require substantial environmental review, and this will be one of them prior to, unless they've already done it. I'm not aware of that, but prior to actually doing anything, they're going to have to follow, in this case, probably the National Environmental Policy Act, which will take some time and effort. Doesn't mean you shouldn't fund them. I'm just
I appreciate that answer.
United.
That's what we deal with in terms of a dollar amount to that project, and I would I reserve the fact that I want to pick one of those or the other. I would rather, if it passes, I'll make a dollar amount suggestion, and then give the body their time enough to come back with a revised plan that we would also future approve. Would that be appropriate?
I think so. There's a comment over there too.
Yeah, this is Eric C. with DWR. I did want to reiterate my comments from last week, particularly regarding the South Forebay Sailing Center. The funding that's being requested isn't for a South Forebay Sailing Center. It's for some equipment that would be used at the South Forebay Sailing Center, and that center doesn't exist right now. So then there'd be beyond just the environmental. There'd be a lot of other regulatory hurdles and approval, land ownership issues, and there'd be a lot of things that need to be approved before that project could ever get off the ground. So I just wanted to make that clear. And I think it was Tony Catalano from the Feather River Center. I had asked the question, well, could that, if the funding wasn't used for the sailing center, would just sit there and wait till the sailing center? He said no, they actually could use that equipment at the North Forebay for some of their programs. So, and that would seem to maybe conflict with what Bob just said. So, I think that would probably be a good thing to get identified. But the other components, the rowing course, that would be just a very significant environmental issue to get resolved. The funding that's at the project, it's questionable whether or not there'd be enough money. There's not a lot of detail as far as how much it would actually take to do that project, but it certainly is going to take quite a bit of money to get the environmental work done and come up with all that. So I can tell you, if DWR was doing that project, if we could do it for $744,000, I'd be very happy with that. I think it'd probably cost us a lot more, but other entities certainly can do things less expensively than we can. But the thing is, you do need to get that environmental process going. It is going to be expensive. So for projects like that that's going to happen, it's going to take quite a bit of money just to do the environmental work, just to do the legal work, and all the other hurdles will have to get done. So I just wanted to point that out.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Member Emberland?
Eric, on that note you're saying, and to the rest of the advisory committee, would it be wise to hold off on funding until we get an amount of the environmental work that needs to be done, and then have them come back and say it's going to cost this much for the environmental studies and so forth, and then we have a better idea of how to fund. I'd like to see this move forward too, but I don't want to see it take 5 years or 4 years or whatever. I like shovel-ready projects. And what's your thoughts on getting, you know, our ducks in a row basically for the environmental part? I know that takes time.
Yeah, regarding the rowing course, it's not shovel ready. I think they're moving in the right direction, but yeah, there's a lot of background work that need to be done before you could even get to the point where you would apply for the permits. So and you know, that package had some of that, but and I don't know how much is just, you know, it wasn't included in the package. It might be sitting on a shelf somewhere. I don't know, but you know, from what I saw in the package, I didn't see enough that, you know, would be enough for us to go forward with it. To support the project. I think conceptually, you know, we're in support of it. We'd love to have a rowing course, you know, in our area, and from a high level, most definitely. And you know, I know the Department of Parks and Recreation has a conceptual support for this. But you know, it would be the Department of Parks and Recreation that would be working with the Feather River Center, like they do right now for the existing program, and so they'd have to have that, you know, that relationship, that concession contract. You know, big facilities like this typically, you know, they're going to take, you know, quite a bit of support to keep them going. And so, you know, DWR, we need to know, you know, first of all, would state parks be willing to backstop this in case, you know, Feather River Center, you know, disappeared or something? Would there be someone there, you know, at state parks to take over, you know, the operation of this? You know, just those kind of basic questions of governance. And I haven't seen, from what I've seen so far proposed to that project, I haven't seen that yet.
Well, that's my concern to the committee members, that we'll throw this money out and nothing's going to be done with it for quite a long time. So I'd like to table this. And my point of view, I table this until we get a course of action as far as the environmental permits, and before we go forth with funding.
But if I could just say one other thing, a project like this, it's a complicated project, and there's a lot of, you know, details, and it takes definitely some expertise as far as having the right type of environmental firm, you know, a consultant to proceed with something like this, and that's going to take money. So you know, it's I will say just you know, in defense of the project, and I'm not sure how to make that bridge, you know, before you get to the full project, but you know, it's in increments. I think it's going to take to get this project prepped up, and I don't think the Feather River Center themselves have that expertise. They would need to have a consultant do that work for them, but you know, they could get it prepped up, and then you maybe take the next step. I don't know how much that would cost to do that, but I think that might be an interim way to go to get this thing to completion, is to do it in interim steps.
And I think he's being kind. I think that it would take every bit of money you have left to allocate and more to get this project going. I mean, I've experienced, as you are, with complex environmental review, and it's going to take some time, and then you have all the permitting. So,
Thank you.
There's a comment over from Steindorf.
Oh.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments. One, the purchase of the property that you're going to discuss in a few minutes. I mean, we're not even clear what that project is, but my read of the requirements within CEQA, that's absolutely going to require CEQA if you go forward with that project being a public entity. So in terms of, you know, apples to apples, other projects that are going to require that kind of regulatory review, that project would also fit within that. And also in terms of being shovel ready, you've got the same issues there. The other one, which I brought up last time, was looking at projects that fit within the Feather River conceptual plan that we put together. And this was actually listed as a high priority project. In fact, this and the Brad Freeman Trail are the only two that are listed as high priority projects. So again, unless we're just going to declare that plan a waste of time and resources, I think the committee really needs to look carefully at that and determine if those are the priorities for this committee or not. And if it's not, then let's just move on and say that you have different priorities that you're going to look at. And also, I think you have to look at what is the potential of each of these projects to actually be able to return revenue to do their own O&M in the future. My read of these different projects, I see most of them don't really have that ability. I think that this particular project does. But if you're just funding O&M for existing infrastructure that's out there right now, tell me how you're not just going to be back here in a couple of years just funding that O&M going forward. So there needs to be a plan how they're going to generate the revenue to sustain themselves. And I think that's a critical threshold they need to look at.
Thank you, Mr. Steindorf. And I'll also weigh in. I'm next in the queue here in regards to that. And I hear what you're saying in regarding the conceptual plan, the master plan, master draft plan. What was the last name we figured out on that one?
Strategic plan.
Strategic master draft conceptual maybe plan.
No,
Regional Fund Strategic
It's a
Plan.
Feather
There you
River
yeah.
conceptual plan.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So in regards to that, I agree that those are very good concepts, and I think nobody here on this council, this committee would disagree that a rowing course club would be beneficial to the community. My concerns have already been spoken. I'll just echo those and I'll even add another one in the staff report, matching funds dependent. To me, that word is pretty big. Depended on receiving Prop 68 funds in the amount of $7 million, which is not available until the 2020 cycle. So that's a maybe, possibly in the future. And then as well with the environmental report that we keep talking about, that's another question mark. So I'm in agreement with Member Emberlin regarding that, although I believe that this is a very qualified project, there are too many question marks for me at this time to see this project move forward or to give money to this project at this point. I am also in the same point of I would like to see projects. I want to know if we're giving funds out. I would like to have a good idea of, okay, when are we going to see results? When are we going to see these finances actually come out and benefit the community, as opposed to that's dependent upon, and we got to also look into this. So there's more information that I would need at this point to vote in favor of giving funds to this project. Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah, and just to reiterate, no one's questioning the need or the significance of a project like this. It'd absolutely be wonderful. We all know that this is actually a pretty big project. You're looking at probably tens of millions of dollars. I believe you have to start somewhere. That's why I was interested in a partial funding to start. But my question would be, who keeps track of when we fund something? Is there somebody who's keeping track of how this money's spent, or is it just here's your check and here you go?
Okay, I'll just speak from the 10 years of managing that. There is a agreement contract that is written. It's approved by legal. It's very, very specific. That's why I mentioned earlier that if you're approving something, you can't just say, here's a check, tell us how you did it. All of the SBF funding is done after the applicant has paid for something. It's reimbursable funding, which is the important part of having a match, so they have some cash to work with or an ability to have some funding. The other thing is that there's a very specific process of following up. I'll use the soccer fields as an example. During the construction of those over a 2-year period, I was probably there at least a minimum of once a month, making sure that things were done properly. On a huge project like this or the soccer fields or something that involves construction, one of the elements of the contract is that the applicant has to have a construction manager. So it is watched closely. The money is just not handed out and spent. Okay.
Great, and something I would like to remind everyone of, we don't have to spend all of this money right now. We can partially fund, we can table this, as Mr. Emberlin had mentioned, some of these projects and revisit them with more research. I Personally, I'm kind of getting the feeling that it's a race to spend all the money, and I'm a little concerned with that. But as far as this project goes that we're discussing, I would be interested in seeing that get started at some level. We all realize that we have very little money here, but it has to start somewhere. But the study and the report would be great to see how far we could get with how much money, rather than just in the blind.
Bob, would you clarify the statements that you just made? Because my understanding was the SBF received the $3 million. So are you saying that a project still needs to go and have DWR clearance on, that to release those funds? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think I ever said that. I'm sorry if that's what you understood. No,
that was the process in the past.
The process in the past, and DWR did not have to approve any project in the past. DWR was the bank for the money, and we had to go to DWR to ask for reimbursement.
Right.
Currently, the funds are on deposit with the fund administrator, which is the city of Oroville. They have a little over $3 million currently in the SBF line item. But no, DWR does not have to be, they do not approve any of the projects. They
approve
would.
The release of the funds.
Now I'll back up a little, because I think you're going to challenge me again. They would have to be involved if the project is in the FERC area, and this particular one is. So it would require approval of DWR as well as FERC. So that's a little different than what I heard you say. Okay,
it's multiple.
Okay. Right, and just to reiterate what Bob said, I'm glad you pointed that out, Bob. But yeah, that is correct. So there's projects that are within the FERC boundary are different than projects that are outside the FERC boundary. That approval wouldn't be for the funding, as you stated. The funding's part of the SBF fund. That money's already been, is already in possession of the steering committee. It's just the approval would be an administrative approval for the project. So and it's deals with FERC. When things are within the FERC boundary, there's the issue of FERC jurisdiction, and so we need to get that worked out. So it doesn't mean it can't happen. It's an extra step that we'd have to go through, and that's actually described in the original settlement agreement language that established the Supplemental Benefits Fund, about that difference between things in the FERC boundary requiring DWR approval and FERC approval, and things outside of the boundary. So it's certainly cleaner for DWR if it's outside the boundary, but we don't want you to think you can't spend this money inside our boundary. Right.
Thank you. Member Pittman?
Thank you. And I kind of want to clarify the issue. This is a reimbursement grant, and it's based upon performance. So the money we're granting is, I feel, very protected. If we choose a dollar amount to this particular project, Feather River Center, and that dollar amount isn't spent, or they run into problems with their plan, we don't reimburse, correct?
Correct.
So I'm kind of on the feeling here it's worth the risk for this group to, as they've shown performance of the past, I look forward to performance to the future. And I would like to, with those in the covenants of reimbursement and all the contracts necessary and that kind of thing, given the dollar amount that I may suggest here, it would also be in the contract that they would come back in a very short period of time to provide us their plan for that dollar amount. And I'm going to say maybe 60 days or 30 days, whatever the committee decides to, so that we can see that the dollars are used. And I kind of, along with the member, the topic of making this project move forward, I think, is seed money. Certainly it's not going to be the whole project, but I believe they may be able to come up with an idea of the best way to take this dollar amount, whatever it may be, and we choose here shortly to move forward with it. The reality is, if they can't make a go of it and they don't see the expenditures, then the money comes back to this body, correct?
sorry, these mics the little red lights do not light up, so it's hard to tell if it's on. The funds actually do not leave, you're correct, until a request for reimbursement has been provided, and that reimbursement fits the contract or agreement, as the city prefers to call it, that was signed. If the funds aren't used, then they become recycled and used for additional, a different project. The 4th soccer field at Riverbend, the money stayed in kind of limbo for almost 2.5 years, and finally the Park District realized that they could not move forward and build that 4th soccer field, and they relinquished the funds, and the money came back. It was then reoffered out to the public.
Right.
Okay.
So we have a history of performance in that particular venue. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor Reynolds.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to comment on. Was I would be interested in a very short time span to see some work done here. We would have to put a time limit on this. I certainly don't want to be sitting here for 2.5 years. When we have a project show up after this, and we have these funds tied up, and a new project is ready to go, and we're sitting here waiting. So it would have to be a specific timeline for me to be interested. Thank you.
Member Emberland?
Just a quick comment. I love to see this happen. I really would. And I'm willing to fund this myself, but not in the full amount. I'd be very interested in funding, and I think we have some comments from the audience too, but to amount that we can get this project ready, shovel ready. I don't know if that's part of this committee's responsibility. I think we have in the past, if I remember right. So I'd like to see a dollar amount, or an estimated dollar amount, to fund the environmental studies and so forth, to see if we do run into problems. We have to do that anyway. And so I'm in favor of Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Pittman, I believe. I'm on board with all their comments. But to the point of issuing the total amount, no, not at this time. I would like to get this project underway, certainly. But get the environmental things accomplished first.
Member Carter?
Yes, I just wanted to say I think it is a great project, but at this time I think there's also some other projects, and I'm afraid if we mention, like say how much we would want to give to it, that maybe we can consider coming back to it after we look at everything else. And then if there's any actually funds left over, then we can maybe decide on one of the three. But that was just my comment.
That's the plan for today, is to go through all the projects, then come back and allocate.
Okay.
Chairman, are we taking any comments from the audience?
No, we've already done that.
All right.
So the next item that we're can discuss, if there's no more comments on that project, is stage. I'll start discussing.
Chairman Thompson, I actually have one quick comment on the last one, just really quick.
Mr. Steindorf?
If the committee chooses to move forward and partially fund this project, at least to do some environmental review, which makes sense. I mean, I've heard today that there are some questions about, how much that could potentially cost. It would be nice to have a commitment from DWR that they're going to be able to fully engage with the applicant to get that environmental review done, because it's clearly going to be within their wheelhouse to work on this project. It's within the project boundary. There are some potential effects. It's really hard to move forward with one of these projects if you don't know all of those implications up front. So there needs to be a partnership between DWR and the applicants to get this thing to move forward.
That's a good point. Mr. C, do you have any comments in regards to that?
I guess, I agree conceptually, Dave, with what you're saying. Certainly state parks would need to be, have a a role in that just as much as the Department of Water Resources. DWR is the landowner; it's a state water project facility, but Parks and Recreation will ultimately be the recreation manager. So I see us that we need to be involved in that. Similar to how we've already had some involvement with the Boat Information Safety Center, that which is mentioned in the proposal, but that's not what the money is for. They're seeking other funds for that. So we have had some engagement right now over the last year or so with the Feather Center on that project. So we need to do something similar. So I think we use the term environmental permitting. That's part of it, but like I said, there's some other regulatory things that would need to be worked on. So I think the idea is to develop this to a point of being that shovel ready project, kind of get those issues out there, and certainly Department of Water Resources will be willing to work with the Feather River Center on that. As far as doing the environmental permitting, those types of things, that would need to come from the from Feather River Center, whoever the project proponent is. But most definitely, we will be engaged with them.
Great, thank you. I see no other comments from the committee, so let's move forward with the next project in order. On our sheet here, the next one is Stage. I will start off in voicing my support for this project. A couple of the reasons why I believe this is not only a qualified but a beneficial project for the whole community is I don't think there's anybody in this room who hasn't been inside several times this year inside of the State Theater. I hear Mr. Steindorf's comments regarding new projects that are sustainable. I think that in regards to the State Theater, that as it is improved, I can see better and more concerts or projects that can happen there, bringing more community involvement. It's a center in their town, and a lot of people, like I said, go there. One other thing that I really enjoy about the State Theater is that it affects and benefits every demographic. I personally would love to see a climbing wall in Oroville. I love climbing. There's not really a climbing gym in Chico. There's a small one, but it's not really that great. And there are things that could benefit the community and get people to come here, but that's only going to impact a small demographic of people and typically a smaller age bracket. Excuse me. The thing about Stage is the schools use it, the kids use it, and pretty much every age uses it, and it is a benefit to the whole community. As our staff presented, I was going to ask them, but why they rated it at a 71, which is pretty high in regards to the other ratings here. 73, excuse me. So it has a good rating from our staff, which for me is also another indication that it clearly fits within the guidelines of not only the NOFA but the master plan. So personally, I know that we do not have all the funds available. They're looking for $1.5 million, and we don't have that here. But I would like to see some of these projects move forward. They have a large group of people who have not only picked it up from the city but also support it and see community involvement. In fact, the maintenance of the State Theater is primarily held up by citizens who sponsor it on a yearly, monthly basis, and volunteers who are also investing their own personal time, volunteer hours to improve the organ and all the different projects that are there. So it has a lot of already community support. This community has already voiced, not only through their money, but also through their volunteer hours, that this is an important part of our community. And I personally would like to see this theater improve and continue to benefit our community. And so at that, I'm open to other comments from the council. Member Carter?
Yes, I would just like to address it because I think it's I've already said the theater, but I really took the time and looked at the strategic planning to really find out what are the guidelines, what are we looking for. And the first one that I really feel is promote recreation within the annex of the Feather River. And 2, to stimulate the local economy. And 3, mitigate the losses caused by the construction of the dam. To me, recreation is a lot of things. Recreation could be sports, outdoor sports, indoor sports. Recreation can be dance. Recreation can be music. Recreation can be arts. I feel that the theater, children in doing arts and movement and music is recreation. And I also feel it does stimulate the economy. So those are the things that I'm looking at. I am concerned that they're asking for $1.5 million. That's a lot because it takes away from all of the other projects. But I do feel, in my opinion, looking at it, they have $750,000 match funds. So even if we just matched, $500,000 or $500,000, that would be able to allow them to get the roof and the solar done. And that's my opinion.
I think the roof is $1 million, from my understanding.
It's $1.2 million, but it says roof and solar. So I don't know if the roof is separated, just the roof is different amount. That says roof and solar.
Member Reynolds?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that as well. I mean, it's absolutely no question what a jewel this is to our community, and but I know that it's slated right now towards more entertainment than recreation. I would like to see more recreation involved there in order to complement these funds. I have no problem voting for this project, but I would like to see the word recreation and whatever that looks like injected into this building and this group here. I've been thinking about it, and most of those things are entertainment. Recreation is what we're looking for. Thank you.
Member Emberland?
Thank you. This project is definitely high on my list. It's probably scored the highest, 95 out of 100. This project is very important to downtown Oroville. I think it'll renew the downtown. It will bring people in to have dinner before entertainment at the theater, perhaps shopping and so forth, stimulate the downtown. So I'm definitely in favor of this. I don't want to go on a limb and spend the total amount. I think it has to be done in steps. I think the theater would be able to do these projects one by one, and I'm probably most willing to make available funds in the tune of $500,000. This will cover, I guess, your priorities, what you think need to be done first, whether it be the marquee or sound system, or I think the hazardous mitigation and stuff. But we need to get that theater done. I think it's going to be a gem for Oroville. It will bring people to the businesses and rejuvenate that downtown immensely. So I'm in favor of funding in the tune of $500,000.
Member Pittman?
I agree. We have to pick a dollar amount. I'm pretty close to that dollar amount in my own vision. But the same covenants would come to stage. It's a little different dollar amount than you have in your proposal. You have some numbered listed items. It would be my inclination to grant that amount pending your bring back to us a plan on how you would spend that dollar amount. Because you have items listed here, and I don't want to pick and choose those items, because you may have, I want to give you the ability to prioritize your items to that dollar amount. So that's where I'm coming from. I'll let the rest talk, because I'm ready to make a motion if somebody else
let's go through them all, and we'll come back. But in my closing thoughts in regards to the funds for this, I also want to bring up the fact that in our staff report, it is listed that numbers 3 and 4 under their proposal could fall under marketing community benefit, which currently still has $138,500. I personally am actually, the number I have was higher than $500,000. I was looking at, again, we can come back to this and make a motion. but I was looking at potentially matching the $750,000 that the city has already given to them. So I don't see any more comments in the queue. So
Could I, sorry, Peanut Gallery.
Mr. Steindorf, I think it was Peanut Gallery number 2, right? That we said last time.
Actually, I'd just like some clarification. There seems to be discrepancy between what staff reported out on the availability of the RDA matching funds and what was in the proposal. So it's unclear on whether that is or is not available as matching funds.
Do you want to go and speak to that, Jordan? Or Tom?
I think Mr. Landau.
Mr. Lando?
I don't know if there were conditions placed on that.
The council did authorize
750,000.
750,000.
So the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see no other comments. Peanut Gallery, do you guys have? The official name for this is the Advisory Council. Thank you very much. I'll write that down so I don't forget.
I like Peanut Gallery.
Great. So let's move forward on the next item on our list. We have Feather River Rec and Parks District. Those that were in favor, if you would like to speak to this, please let me know. Member Carter?
Okay, as I just read, I feel that the property, we've discussed it quite a bit, but it does promote recreation, and it is next to the river, so it does meet the strategic plan, and it is we have to sometimes look at the future, and in order to expand the recreation and recreation, which it has the word in it, recreation, we need to purchase property to secure that it can expand and build and offer more recreation to the children in this community.
Member Emberland, and then Member Pittman.
Yes, I agree with Marcia. One other thing, this land is very much needed by the activity center. I don't know if anybody has gymnastic kids or kids in gymnastics, but during some of the tournaments, how many are there, Marcia, people involved there?
Oh, usually at a tournament could be as many as 3,000 people could come to one meet over a weekend.
And so the parking there is totally inadequate. They're parking at Tractor Supply and down the road, and there's only one in and out to that building. It dires me of another exit. I've gotten hit twice trying to get out of that parking lot. So the land adjacent to Mitchell could be used for that additional exit, and the adjoining land. I mean, there's so much potential there for recreation. Small botanic gardens, community gardens, playgrounds. Right now, it's just sitting there wasted, and I'm afraid there's going to be commercial encroachment coming soon. Low income, maybe motels and so forth, and I would like to not be landlocked or have the facility landlocked. And just quoting Chief Legrone, he says, if you're going to build something, build it here. With the reasoning being that the activity center is normally operating 5 to 6 days a week, sometimes 7 with tournaments, so very little chance of any major vandalism. I'm sure there's going to be, no matter what, but I think the center, in order to grow, needs that additional land and start building the recreation for the kids out there and parents. Thank you.
Member Pittman?
Yeah, I think, well, it's my personal elected goal for some time to see some type of improved or aquatic center, and I believe the recreation department should be the lead agency on that. When we had the redevelopment agencies, I thought the RDA should have been lead agency, but we no longer have that agency, so it falls to the rec district, and I would follow their lead in terms of their aquatic center, their park. Where it's located, though, right at this point, it's hard for me to justify the expenditure of funds for that land, because actually their proposal for the Nelson Avenue or the Nelson Pool, I was pleasantly surprised. It was a great idea. I think it's a huge expansion of an existing facility, which means it's more shovel ready than anything we have on this day. And I look to maybe the Nelson Park area, Nelson Ballpark area, to potentially be a future aquatic center, which is land they own today, and maybe there's some land that we could get DWR to let loose of, adjoining them. I believe it's 10 acres or so that's out there adjoining the Nelson Ballpark. That's another discussion. So at this time, it's hard for me to support the expenditure for the land when I think this community is crying out for something, and the facilities that we can fund at another date. I don't see this project as going away. It would certainly be good to keep on our list, but I just can't see these funds today for that. That's my position.
We can skip me pretty much said what I was going to say. Member Carter?
I was just wanted to say, I forgot, that it also says that it's 10 parcels. I do not feel it should be the 10 parcels. It should really only be the 8 that is directly adjacent to the district, and mainly, like Emberlyn said, the safety. It is going to be a time when there's going to be pulling out. With the Walmart being there, there's so much more traffic, and someone is going to get hurt, and it's going to be a life of a child. And I have been dreading that for years and years. It's been so important to get a second exit out there. But there is also matching funds as far as property owners' contributions, naming rights. Maybe someone can name if we ever build a facility there. We don't know, but it could be used for so many other things. But so I would say that a maximum request should be $400,000 and not to exceed it.
Great. I don't see any other comments from our advisory committee.
Mr. Chairman, I would just point out again, and it's not a limiting factor on this, but this would take environmental review prior to an acquisition.
I do.
Mr. Zeitler?
The concerns I have is that concerns you addressed earlier, shovel ready. I mean, you're talking the Feather River Aquatic Center. At that particular point is, you've got the same issues, you've got the same issues that are there, and it's the property is going to be paved. Is essentially, is that really recreation? Is that really recreation in the short term? In the next several years. So, I have a concern. There's not a lot of economic revenue, at this particular point. It's kind of like the Feather River Center. I'd like to see both of these, somewhere, but I just don't think that they're fitting now. And the concern I have is that if you do go out to Nelson, and one of the things I asked at the prior meeting was, we want more warm water. Potentially, that would be a partial for another, pool facility or greater water park there. I'd be much more in favor of that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Last comment I'll make, and actually a question that I have in closing, is looking at the staff report. Staff has scored this application 40 out of a possible 100 points. Would you mind just kind of explaining that very low score? If that's a B, C, this is an F to fail score as far as the NOFA. Can you explain that, either Bob or Jordan?
Yes, I think one of our biggest concerns would be it requires a 100% matching fund. They didn't allot for any matching funds for this. It also, to touch on Zeitler's point, it doesn't directly have anything to do with recreation. The long-term plan does, but how far that long-term plan is, or how long it could take, or how much more money it would need, I think affected our score a lot. As well as, I know it may not be uncertain anymore, but when we first got the proposal, a lot of the property owners, it was unsure if they were even willing to sell property. So putting a price value on that was kind of hard for us to to view. And now with our market as well, with the campfire, the cost of these parcels could be dramatically different as well. Let's see. I think that kind of sums it up. It's not, according to our guidelines, it's not directly in one of the reaches. It borders reach number 4, which is the Riverbend Park area. So that was part of our scoring process as well.
Great. Thank you so much for that explanation. I don't see any other members in the queue, so let's move forward to the next project. City of Oroville, the pavilion at Bedrock Park. I saw you hit it, so it didn't come up here, but Mr. Mayor Reynolds, there you go.
Yeah, I would like to see this project move forward as well, but the security is a concern. I would like somebody dedicated to patrolling these parks. I'm afraid it would just become a haven. We have a homeless problem right now that just seems to be inundating everything we leave unattended. So I would like to see us address that issue before moving forward with this project, but absolutely for it to table it.
I'm next in the queue. There's nobody else as of yet, but I'm in complete agreement with Mayor Reynolds in regards to that. Looking forward, as we have received the 1% sales tax in the cities, looking into how we can better secure the community here. It would be, I believe, irresponsible to build something without being able to, after it's built, to secure it. So I'm at this point, although I believe it is a viable and a valid project, I don't believe the timing is right for this one. And with that, Member Emberland.
Yes, I agree. I've had many people come up to me since they know I'm on the Feather River Park District board. Say, why don't you take care of this park? Why don't you build this? Why don't you do that? And I have to always say, well, it's not the city's, or it's not our park anymore. I think we offered to take back that park, but we haven't heard back from the city. But I agree. The security down there needs to be improved. We don't have. I would love to see a pavilion. The presentation made would be gorgeous with places to be. I'm 100% for it, but until we get a secure statement from the city on as far as on security, I agree. Not to fund.
I'm next in the queue. You've been around for a while, Mr. Pittman. Do you remember, just out of curiosity, the discussion as far as the ownership of Bedrock Park? You pretty much know everything about it.
Well, the land is clearly owned by the city of Oroville. It was an agreement with the rec district to operate it for a period of time, along with the tennis courts, and then the city took the Bedrock Park back as an operating park, and that's kind of where it's at today. The land ownership has never changed. It's just was a choice made by the city at X time. But the tennis courts are operated by the rec district, and they've done a nice job with that. I don't know what the current status is in terms of planning and that. I've just been on the council for 2 meetings, so I haven't had a chance to have that discussion. I'm a little bit stressed over the removal of the what do we call it? The bleachers. That was a nice feature. There also used to be a wall that you could have educational presentations, environmental training there, but I believe the homeless destroyed that, and essentially they destroyed the benches. So that's my reasoning for saying until we have a different security system for a city park or any park, I'm hesitant to invest a lot of money because it will go somewhere else that it should be in place. And it's, I guess the word is impatient with the use of our parks today that are not safe and comfortable for our public to use. So I'm looking forward for that to change before I really fund anything in a park.
Thank you so much for that history. Member Emerland?
No more questions.
Mayor Reynolds?
Thank you. I actually got a little personal history with that amphitheater that was at Bedrock Park. My father, being a masonry contractor, actually built that, and I helped him lay the stone along with many others when I was a teenager there. And so it was really heartbreaking to see that beautiful structure destroyed. And so that's why I'm adamant about addressing the security before we put anything else at risk. I believe that if we're going to own something, we should be able to protect it. Thank you.
I have a couple of comments, if we could.
Mr. Zeitler?
In some cases, many service clubs have been down and policing Bedrock Park for years. I know the Exchange Club has done that, and others trying to maintain the facility also, but get folks a presence there. So in a sense, if you don't build this, you'll get exactly what you got right now. But I would like to say, ask the city to come back and really say what fencing or could we use to potentially protect this. I think Chuck's questions is a good question, because you do have funding here available, but if you've got a pavilion, we can have security to it, and people start to use it. Folks, the public starts to use it at that particular point. You take back that. This is the exact same problem we have with Riverbend Park right now. I mean, if you don't patrol it, and this committee has given funds in the past for cameras. This committee has given funds to the police department, bought electric vehicles for security and surveillance and things like that. We have a history of trying to maintain and secure our own. So I don't want to throw a project out when we haven't looked at really, this could have been a lot, more information built out more. So in some cases we can say, you know what, kick this back to the city and look at this, bring us back, security and other things that are there. There are camera systems we have that Feather River Park has. I don't think they've ever been installed at that. Thank you.
Mr. Steindorf?
This is, I think, a bigger topic than we fully have time to address today, but just echoing on what other members of the committee have said. This one as a personal note on this. My wife, was a teacher at Paradise Elementary School before it burnt down, is now over at Bird Street, and thank you all for hosting them here. Her regular lunchtime activity with her teaching partners to go out and walk along the river, and she said just in the few months that she's there, it's changed to where they're not really comfortable, partially because of who's there and partially because of just the odor that's down there. So it's significant. You can fence it and you can put in cameras and so forth, but ultimately I think the goal of this town is to change that waterfront so that it's a place where people want to be. And I'll just say it, I mean, it is crazy that the homeless population, who deserve to have a place to go, but they're currently occupying the most valuable real estate you have in your town. Meanwhile, Feather River Hospital is driving doctors in with limos from Yuba City to work here. That's the dynamic that you have to change. Somehow you have to make it so that the doctors want to live here and you have another place for homeless, but it's not your waterfront. And that's really was the goal of developing a river plan, and I think the goal of ultimately what this community wants to fund, but also look at, I totally agree with what Mayor Reynolds said. If if these aren't the right projects, then maybe it's pulling back, but make sure that if you agree that that's the end goal, what is the bigger picture to get there?
Thank you, sir. Member or Mayor Reynolds?
You know, I don't really know how popular this is going to be, but at this point, I know what we have, and I've seen what we could have. You know, I would think that a entry fee to enter these parks would pay for a security guard, because a fence is not going to do it. Camera, sure, you can just see who broke it, but or took it. But then what? What time they took it? Then what? But the presence of a security guard, you know, I would gladly pay a fee to get into these parks, and I mean, I would pay the fee even if it wasn't financing a security guard, but I would highly recommend that it does. I really think that we need to entertain that. You're absolutely right. This is our most valuable real estate, and the people that are using it the most are not contributing anything but blight. And I realize that it's probably not the most popular statement, but that's how I feel about it. I think we need to lean in that direction. I think these parks need to have an admission fee.
Thank you. Member Pittman?
You know, it's an interesting observation as we look around at other parks. Pay parks don't have problems. When was the last time you saw a homeless person in a state park? Anybody? Don't see it.
Coming up.
Yeah. So I agree with Mayor Reynolds on that topic, and that's part of what I say about a security plan for Bedrock Park in particular. There's also another factor, too, that with the mitigations of the FERC licensing, I remember the discussion of a weir that was supposed to happen in the river. So does that weir affect future things like the swimming pool, the swimming pond, and all those other activities? So there's a lot of questions to be answered at Bedrock Park before we actually fund anything. The pay park idea is one thing I'll be pursuing with the city, because I think it's where we have to go for a variety of things. So with all that discussion, and to kind of move forward, I would actually ask that we take this particular project and table it.
Thank you. Mayor Reynolds?
Again, you know, I know I've said this a couple times, but I'd like to reiterate, we don't have to race to spend all this money. I think that this is a good project. I just think the timing's wrong. If we tabled some of this money, set it aside, I think that we would be happy with the results. It would certainly motivate those that need to be motivated to move forward with the infrastructure of being able to enjoy something like this project. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Anybody from the advisory panel? All right. At that point, can we let's move on to the next item, which is the City of Oroville, the railing up along Table Mountain Boulevard. I'll speak to this first because I've said it several times, and I'll say it again. I believe that this project better and more clearly fits within the RDA. The funds for the Supplemental Benefit Fund, according to what I understand and read, is for recreation, economic development, and improvement of lifestyle. This is maintenance, repairing of blight, and that clearly fits in within the RDA. I told the chief that before it was actually submitted to the SBF. So I would like to see this project submitted back to the RDA and the funds come out of that account to see this item move forward in that direction out of those funds. I do agree with what Member Pittman said in regarding to lighting. As you drive down that way at nighttime, it's very dark, and lighting will not only help people feel safe, but I also know that lighting can also help to alleviate vandalism or destruction of property as people driving that all the time. And if it's lit up, people can see what's going on there. So I'm in high favor of seeing this come back to City Council for not only the secured railing, but also lights added to that. Member Pittman?
Oh, I'm sorry, I still in this queue. Yeah, I would move this project to be tabled for the city to come back at a future date.
Thank you, Member Carter.
Yes, I was just looking at it, and it provides safety, but it doesn't really provide recreation. It is along the river, but it also only has 23% matching funds.
And Mayor Reynolds.
You know, I'm probably going to get in a lot of trouble for this. My wife has been telling me for 15 years, don't you know somebody? Can't you do something about that fence? And the truth is, yes, I know plenty of people, and there is something to be done, but it's my understanding that, I mean, I went to reach as far as, well, if we put a slick rail on top, it can be recreation. But how we can slide down. But I'm sorry. I just feel that it's more suited for the RDA, and my proposal would be make it nice. Don't just put a barrier up there. Let's put some nice light poles up there with some really nice fencing. You know, some sort of, well, I probably get in trouble for throwing this out there, but masonry always makes things look nice. You know, I just want to do it right. I feel like this is, it's certainly not the front door to our community, but it certainly is one of the important entrances. And when you go to Folsom and places and you see how they've done things, I think that we have a lot in common with the Folsom area, and I think that we should really focus on something aesthetically pleasing that's going to do the job for us. Like I said, I'm for this project more than you know, but I just feel that it's better suited for the RDA. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else in the queue, so at this point, maybe what we can do is have recommendations. I'm open to suggestions of how to move forward. I know that people were concerned with how we did the last session, that they felt that projects were approved as they came down and monies were depleted. Although that's not the case, I would like to avoid that perception. I did see if I'm going to recap here, I saw a lot of people saying tabling the railing. Is that correct? From everybody, do I at least get a?
That's my comment. Yes.
I would
I
consider
agree.
that.
Okay, so we can just move that off the table. I heard the same thing for the pavilion. Is that everybody's wish?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I agree.
All right, we'll remove those two off. So the ones that are left are the Feather River Center, Stage, and Feather River Parks District. I personally saw the most support, although I could be biased because the main two projects that I brought up were Stage and the Veterans Memorial. So I am open to suggestions from the council here regarding the projects to move forward. I did hear a number from Stage, from the committee here. I heard support for the Feather River Rec and Parks District, and also for the Feather River Center about seed money for the future for those three projects. So I would like to hear some opinions before we make a motion, at least making some opinions or ideas of how to move forward on these next three projects, if at all. I have Mayor Reynolds and then Member Emberland in the queue.
Again, with the aquatic center, if that's what is it, Feather River Center there, seed money, there would have to be a pretty strict time limit on seeing something happen. Like I said, I don't want these funds being tied up for too long, because I think that this town is getting ready to move forward quickly, and I think that we're going to see other projects come forward, and I don't want this tied up for a significant amount of time and us not be able to use it. So if I did approve something for the aquatic center, it would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000, and there would be a strict time limit on that. As far as the property purchase, I don't support that at all. I'm sorry. That's too far down the road for any type of recreation. And I personally know, personally know this person well, one of the property owners, and he's not interested in selling that property. So I'm not interested in supporting that, and I think that it's just not a close enough or worthy enough project for things that were ready to happen quickly. It's just doesn't meet the needs of what I'm interested in. As far as stage, I'm for them 100%. I believe that there was two numbers thrown out there. To me, I would support either one. I would support 500. I would support 750. But I don't think that we should spend all of the money today. I'm sorry. I just don't. I have a problem with a race to a zero balance. I think that we should table some of this stuff. But I'm in support of stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Emberland. And then I'm in the queue.
Okay, I don't know exactly how you want to work this, Scott, but do you want some figures thrown out? Is that what your goal
Sure,
is?
we're looking just to, putting our cards on the table and regarding these items, and then from there we can get a good census of how to move forward and which ones to approve and which ones to table.
Okay. As far as the Feather River Center, for the three items they had, the sprint rowing course, the South Four Bay Sailing Center, and expand programs and rental inventory. I don't want to think that I'm not in support of this. I would love to see this project, but I would like to table this project right now until the next SBF meeting, quarterly meeting. I believe that's in March. I'm not sure. March or April? April. And have them come back and to see where we stand as far as the environmental studies, if they can get in touch with DWR and see what it takes to get all this going. And the other one we have, this stage. Love this. I love this project. I don't think we can fund it for that amount right now. However, I am willing to fund $500,000 to that fund, and then have them report back as their spending goes and their priorities on this. But I'm willing to hand out $500 in support of stage at this point. Hopefully we'll be getting some more money too in the future, but we can always get more or come back for more. And as far as which one we had here was
the land.
Oh, the land purchase. I still am in agreement to get this activity center out of an island, and I think we can make this into a recreational area around that. It's not going to be paved. We can have a gravel roadway, an exit. It's just an overflow portion, and the other portions adjacent to it. I'm as Marcia said, not to buy the land on Mitchell. This will significantly reduce that amount. So I'm in for $400,000 to purchase adjacent land, enough to get out of an island situation there, to further enhance our recreation and the future recreation facilities, whether it be gymnasiums or outdoor basketball courts, tennis courts, or whatever. So $400,000 for that.
Thank you. I'm next in the queue. One thing I do want to bring up to the council, I am in agreement with Mayor Reynolds in regards to race to distribute all these funds. I just want to remind this committee that the timing to on the next NOFA is really up to us. So if we have a project such as the Feather River Center that we're looking to in the future for putting money aside, really that's our decision, we don't necessarily have to even earmark any money in regards to that. I would like to see, I would love to see the full project take place. There's just too many questions for me right now in regarding the environmental study. I don't know, do you guys even know how much, do you have a, yeah, as far as the cost for that, primarily that's my main question.
I apologize if I didn't include it in the in our paperwork, but we have working with Melton Design Group. We have a real good team that's going to address all the issues around CEQA and around the permitting and all that stuff. And this is, I guess you could call it seed money, but we have ESA to do physical and environmental surveys. Come
up to the microphone so they can record.
Yeah, and primarily just speak to the environmental study, please.
Right. We've requested $688,000, which we can cut down to $638,000. But we have ESA for physical and environmental surveys and studies for CEQA compliance and permitting. We have HDR, a large company for civil, structural, and bridge engineering. We have BK Cooper, ready to do marine engineering and in-water excavation, and land economics consultants for economics and financial planning, in addition to Melton Design Group for all the landscaping and general planning. So we already have built into this all of our anticipated permitting costs and those things that you have concerns about. We also work very closely with Eric.
Could you just let us know the costs and regarding specifically those items we just mentioned, the permitting and the environmental study?
I have permitting environmental study. I have environmental compliance here at $118,344. Scoping and cost estimation for next phase at $22,857. Site analysis, topography, biological surveys at $161,566. Project management at $68,766, and conceptual designs and costs for in-water architectural, recreation, etc. is $148,568. So we've got everything broken down for each of those areas, and whatever funding you can give us, we would use to get the project started, and we will work with Eric and State Parks to follow all the procedures and processes we have to follow to get this going. But we can't do anything unless we get that money to get that permitting and that stuff going. So
just to recap regarding $118,000, that's for the environmental, is that correct?
Yes, sir. It's environmental compliance, $118,344.
And the $22,000 is for which aspect?
$22,000 was scoping and cost estimation for the next phase.
Okay, that's just scope and analysis.
Right.
161 is for
site analysis, topography, and biological surveys.
So that's also for the biological surveys.
Yes, sir.
And then the 68,000 is that's for
MDG to do
the whole project, or just
project management
for the whole project?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then the 148 one more time.
Excuse me. The 148 was develop conceptual designs and costs. So any changes we have to make in those things.
Gotcha. So if I do my quick math here, I'm looking at 142-ish for the environmental analysis and the scope for the next phase study. Is that correct?
I haven't added those things up in
it's 118,344 and 22,857. Who's good with math here, real quick? Come on, Mike.
Somebody got a calculator?
Roughly, you're looking at $142,000.
161. Let's call it
118 plus 22. 118,344 plus 22,857. Those can be done today, right? Once, if you got the monies for those, you could move forward with the project.
We have a question from Steindorf.
Mr. Steindorf.
Or we might be reading each other's mind. Let Mr. Landau go first.
Well, as I heard what was just explained, the environmental review, much less the permitting, it would take at least a biologic plus the the 118 to do that at least, because you're gonna have to do the biologic to go through the environmental process. I think personally, being involved in this and having done a lot of CEQA and NEPA compliance, that's a low estimate for this type of project.
Where did you guys get your numbers for that?
Melton Design Group developed them for us, with us in conjunction with the other organizations, ESA, HDR, BD Cooper, and Land Economics. We have a whole spreadsheet of the, which I don't have in front of me, Greg has it, that lays out all the project parts, the aspects, and all the sections we need to do, and who is going to do it, and how much time it's going to take, and what their estimated cost is.
When were these numbers done? What date?
When were these done? The initial NOFA was due in November. We did these in October, so.
Okay.
So just for the, I have a little calculator here.
Just to round them up, Scott.
My numbers come up to pretty much $303,000 for the environmental scope and the biological, just for the committee to be aware of that. That if the committee's wish is to sow into this to see it move forward, that would be 303 would be something that could see this move forward if that's the desire of this council. So thank you, sir.
Okay, and Gary, these were September 11th, 2018.
Okay, thank you.
And one recommendation maybe to attach to that is maybe a specific directive from the committee on where you hope that they will be able to get with that. You know, what do you want them to come back? Because I understand the desire to have a little more certainty about the project and how far away it is. So delivering that directive to the applicant and then saying, with this amount of funding, can you get us to that answer? So having them, you know, if you decide to fund that today, make sure that they come back to you. This is where we will be able to get, because you don't want them to go spend that money and then come back and go, well, that, you know, that still doesn't get us to our answer.
And you often have me find that I step out of my lane, but I'm going to agree with what most of you said. There's not an urgency to do this today.
Right.
My suggestion would be, and I think it's a great project. I'd love to see the project, but reframe it, come back at the April meeting to make sure that we know what permits are required, how environmental review is going to be done, and the committee can always reserve the money to do it.
Right.
And if we're waiting for the proposition, it sounded like that's 2020 anyhow. So I don't think it'll delay the project, but it might give us more certainty as to where we're headed.
I think that's good advice.
Yes, and I want to be clear. I want to clarify Proposition 68 funds. They had $250 million that State Parks is allocating, and it turns out we're not eligible for any of that money. Feather River Park and Rec is, other city agencies are, but not us because we're on State Parks land. So we're looking for those funds from other sources, and what we are planning to do is take whatever we can allocate and leverage it for additional funds from the state or from other grantors or other sources, wherever we could find.
I would agree with Mr. Landone regarding if you could, April meeting, specifically as far as next stage environmental biological scope, to have those updated numbers brought back. That's my wish, but we have other members in the queue. And does anybody else have questions for this gentleman?
I actually have one, just to be
yeah.
clear on, it's actually DWR land, but managed by State Parks. So is that
Correct?
And is that what the statement you just made still the case if it's just managed by State Parks?
I don't know that answer.
That'd be good.
I don't know. I don't know that answer.
Right.
They told us at this Prop 68 meeting that since we're part of State Parks, we're a concessionaire of State Parks, that they have a hard time, at least, if not impossible, to give us the money to themselves. But as I said last time, we're meeting with Cedric, I forget his last name, who's Office of Community Involvement with State Parks, and he's interested in our projects and wants to come up and talk to us and find ways to help us.
And this, Eric, could I comment? I think that's a good point. You know, it is complicated. I know it is. You know, DWR is the fee title holder. We actually have a transfer of control and possession agreement with State Parks for that property that dates back to the 1960s. So that's why they're the recreation manager out there. And it was state law that set that whole thing up way back when. So, but those are the kind of things that I see could be worked out in this interim step before we make the big jump to the $300,000. You know, we could get those things lined out as far as, you know, where those go, because when I mentioned state parks earlier, what would be helpful for DWR would be to get some kind of a letter of intent or agreement or something from state parks that, you know, we state parks, support this project and will, be the entity that will be administering it, and would be like in other places that are our project where there's a concessionaire. Like the marinas is just to use an example, as far as the facility, there's special concession agreements that state parks has that they do all over the state of California, so they're good at this. And when it comes to administration of facilities, if the concessionaire were to drop out, state parks then retains ownership of that and responsibility for those facilities. Those would be the kind of things that DWR would like to have worked out with state parks, kind of behind the scenes. And so anyways, that's where I see getting that type of an agreement first. And then we would go to that next step. Then you could get into more of the doing the on the ground surveys and that sort of thing, which would be important because we do need to scope the project. We need to know the amounts of materials, the techniques that would be used for the construction to get impacts. At some point there'll be the determination if mitigation is going to be necessary, where that mitigation is going to occur. Is it going to be on site? That's like a whole other thing. That would involve DWR. So if it's going to be off site, it'd be simpler for us. Just things like that all have to be worked out. But
and we're ready to do all that. Whatever we have to do to make it happen, we're going to do. Time is the only thing that's holding us. It's going to take a while. So, okay,
yes,
thank you.
Tony, I have one question. And Dave and Eric, please jump in whenever you can. This goes back to Prop 68. If the Feather River Parks and Recs District partnered with you for this project, would this be eligible, do you think? Dave?
Way out of my wheelhouse.
Okay. I mean, you have any grant sent to Feather River District Park, or for the Parks District, to help Tony's plan. Do you think that's a controversy with DWR and the state parks?
No, I don't see why it would be.
Okay.
I would certainly want parks because again, it would be the same issue. This would be parks would be the one that would then be working with Feather River Parks.
It'd be the district's part,
right?
Not state parks.
All right.
Well, and after my quippy answer, actually, it's certainly worth exploring. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's something we've thought about also. Partnering with Feather River Park and Rec on this.
So I'd like to
I don't
see
know
you come
about
back on that.
concessionaires and all that stuff, but we could talk about that.
Yeah, I'd like to see a discussion on that and come back.
Thank you.
And if you like, could we had another request in for operations too, of maintenance. I didn't want to lose that in this discussion.
Gotcha. Thank you.
you.
Member Carter?
Yes, I was just addressing the land. And Mayor Reynolds, I was just going to tell you something. You're correct. There is someone who owns 4 of the pieces of property that understood it and it owns it and purchased it. But it's not important that we have all of those at this time for the safety of the
I'm sorry,
children.
this is a different one.
I
this
thought
is
we
for
were
the
talking about all 3 of them.
No,
I
that
meant 2 of them. Then we've already talked about this one.
Member Pittman?
Yeah, just to move this process along, and given Mr. Lando's suggestion, I'd like to make a motion that we hold in reserve $350,000 pending the Feather River Center coming back at our next meeting, which is, when is our next meeting?
April.
April
23rd.
April 12th. Coming back at the April 23rd meeting with a plan on how they would utilize those funds and the potential of the environmental costs and all the questions that we have, and we would hold it in reserve, that dollar amount, so you have something to work with. Of course, at that time, this body would still have to approve the issuance of that, but gives you something to work with and also moves our process along. I make that as a motion.
I second that.
All right, we have a first and second. Yes, go ahead.
Am I on? Yes. So each of these agenda items has 3 possible actions associated with them. Not making any determination is one potential action, but what this motion really in many ways does is approve the dollar amount that you're talking about with conditions attached to whether those are going to be released or not. So you'll see on the original agenda from the last meeting, there's an approval as submitted, there's an approval with amendments or conditions, in which case this one being the condition that, look, we're going to set aside these dollars, but before we're going to allow you to spend any of it in a reimbursable way, you're going to have to come back to us and clarify all of these things. Or on each one of these agenda items, to deny the funding. So we have a number that, you know, you've sort of said we're not really going to look at this point. We do need we need a motion and a vote to not fund those, equally as we would need a vote to fund any of the projects. I just want the chair to be aware. So as we go through, I think it's item 6A through, I'm not sure what number. Yeah.
I don't care if you do that, but I respectfully disagree. You have funding applications, you're allocating money. If you don't allocate it, they're obviously not approved. But
correct.
That's fine. I mean,
right.
If you want to make that motion.
And
I would also suggest that on this one, you're not allocating money. You're simply holding money aside, and we'll re-agendize in April what we'd like to do.
Yeah, and I would be okay with that. I'm not okay at this point to do what he's saying, giving them the money, because I would like to see clarification on their numbers. And so if the motion you're saying is his, is that?
And I would agree in that case. I definitely agree with the two of them. And I don't believe you're in a position to approve it. I think you could simply say we'd like to look at it at the next meeting and agendize it properly.
And if we need to, I don't think we even need a motion to say, hey, we'll just look at this amount and deduct $350 and just not spend it today. You know, that's another option, and I would be in favor of that as well.
You all described my motion very well.
So does it make it more better legal as far as just looking at the 967 number and just deducting $350 from it from our mind? Is that as far as a legal manner?
Well, what you would be doing is authorizing whatever in an amended amount, whatever you are actually approving, and then whatever's left over is just left over.
Well, what about we just make a motion to not spend $350,000, period?
My suggestion, based on what Mr. Marciniak has said, and I think it's a pretty simple one, and that is, it sounds like there's some level of funding for stage that the group is talking about, that you'd make the motion to fund whatever you want to there, and you would, frankly, what you'd wind up doing is deny the other applications, but clearly you'd say that we're going to agendize whatever you want to agendize, Feather River, for example, for the next agenda.
Sure, I'm great with that.
That's the
Do you want to re-motion your motion, sir, Mr. Pittman?
Could I?
Well, and I'm trying to handle the fundings one at a time because we're still on the topic of Feather River Center. And I guess my motion would be to ask for that to be re-agendized at the next regular meeting in April, whatever the date is, for further consideration based upon new information brought forward from the applicant. Additional information brought forward from the applicant, answering a variety of questions. And I won't mention the dollar amount, but I think...
So that's the motion.
That's the motion. We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
We have a second?
I second that.
All right, we have a first, second. Voting is open. All right, go ahead.
Motion carries.
All right, so the next item, I'm open for discussion regarding the Feather River Parks District or the stage. It was like the last two we're really looking at here. I would like to, at this point, just maybe talk about stage, or I'm really open. We got two left here. So what's the desire of the council? We got a request to speak. I can't see though.
Go ahead with stage.
All right. How about we just decide? Where do you guys want to go first?
Stage.
I got stage. Stage. All right. Let's discuss stage at this point. So I've heard 500, and I mentioned 750, and I know that we want to put aside. We don't want to spend 350. My thoughts are, and I never really see the mayor or the chair making a motion, but can the mayor make a motion?
Yeah.
Great. That's good to know. So a little education on my side. Well, I know we've kind of beaten this one like a dead horse. I've heard 500, and I've heard a lot of support for that number. I also know that we have $138,500 in our marketing community benefit fund, and as staff has indicated that there's some projects in here that fit in that. So I would make a motion to add 500 that has been mentioned and 138,500 for marketing community benefit, bringing the total to $638,500. That is my motion to fund a stage.
Clarification on that motion. I'm in agreement to the dollar amounts and the motion, but do we also need to add a direction to staff to move that money into the project fund? Or can it be just done as he made the motion?
The request?
Yeah.
Actually not. What we've done in the past is when we've had a NOFA with 3 categories, which we did this time, if there were funds left in one or more of the categories, they were automatically or assumed moved into the remaining category. The other point I just want to make, maybe to clarify for Mr. Reynolds, this is not all the money the SBF has. This was the NOFA that was issued, which was a little over $2 million.
Right.
Okay.
So under the clarification, would you put what the chairman dollar amount? Could you put that on the screen so we could all see it before we vote on it?
It's at.
It's taking the
It's at
138
right.
and then adding it to the 967. Is that what you want me to do?
Yeah, please.
Should be 638.
And then he recommended 500.
Yes. Yeah.
It brings it down to 600.
He recommended 500 plus 138.
Yeah.
So take 38, 6
or 5.
638.5 away from.
Okay.
Which is it just changed to 3. Okay.
So everybody knows the math before we vote on it.
But she no, you just deleted the 138 in there.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make it confusing.
So that would be the remaining balance is 467,142 if this motion were to pass.
Well, plus you still have the money in the revolving loan fund.
Mm-hmm.
How much was that, Bob?
230,000.
230.
So,
okay.
You know, that would then be added to Jackie. If you're going to add that column, just add in 230,000.
Oh, yeah, 1, 2, 3. There you go.
Yeah. And again, this is the money for this NOFA period only, not all of the money that the SBF has. Okay.
And I would again emphasize there's not a need to spend it all.
Right.
Correct.
At this time, yeah.
Right. This time.
So the motion for stage is what dollar amount total?
638,500 is what I heard from the motion.
That is correct.
At this point, there's not a second.
I second that.
We have a first and second.
Motion carries.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay, so
All right, so now with the next and final item is the Feather River Rec Parks District for the purchase of the land. We've talked this one to death. So do we have a motion? Oh, we have a request to speak. I can't see though, Jackie.
I don't know who was.
I'm not sure if these are up to date, but I have Pittman, Carter, and Emberland in the queue.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have been off.
And then Carter.
Okay. I just wanted, before we vote on this, I wanted just to clarify a few things because safety and children are extremely important to me. And at this time, the Recreation Department has between 300 to 400 families and children every day coming in and out of the facility. It is becoming very dangerous there, again, as I said. And yes, what I was addressing is, Mayor Reynolds, you're correct. We do have a buyer who has decided that he's going to hold. And that's okay, because and it makes it actually even better for the SBF, because we only really need the 2 main exits. The one large one, which also allows for recreation. It actually fits. We had drawings years ago from, I think, actually here at the SBF. And if you can see it, a aquatic center will actually fit on this one, just the one parcel. That's the most important one. And we also have the other, you could have an exit where the foyer is, where you come in. You'll be able to drive straight out to Mitchell. So you're allowing a second exit out to Mitchell. That's the most important thing. And if the aquatic center is built on the whole thing, it may not be. But Nelson is wonderful that we did that, but it is not, it doesn't make the pool bigger. It doesn't cover it for senior citizens to do swimming year round. It doesn't, so it's aquatic center is different than a swimming pool and upgrading a pool. Only allowing, which would, these buyers, we could purchase this at $200,000, which is a huge significant less than $970,000 that we started with. And it would still allow an aquatic center, a basketball court, a whatever we decide the recreation, it could actually grow. Otherwise, if we don't purchase this property, we will be landlocked in, and the district will never be able to grow. So I just really want to put that out. I know it's a lot of money, but at this time, $200,000 to future recreation for our community and safety, especially when you have a meet. And there are usually 5 meets at the district, and there are usually minimum 3,000 people that go 3 days a week. That's 15,000 people coming in. And let me tell you, we've talked about the parking. These people have to run around where the motel is, down all the way through, especially in the rain, to come watch their children compete. And I think we really need to think about at least not landlocking the district in, and the motion would only be for $200,000.
Member Emberland?
Well, I agree with Marcia on most of her points. I think we all learned from the campfire that it's important that if we had an emergency at the activity center, I think we'd be in big trouble trying to get out of that facility. Having another exit would help this a lot. And again, this is not just purchase of land just to have land. It's a future for recreation. As Marcia said, there could be tennis courts, basketball courts, still left after a drive is put in and an outlet onto Mitchell Avenue. So I'm in favor of this with a little bit of more of amount for fencing and so forth of $300,000.
Thank you. I'm next in the queue. I would like to, I don't see an itemized list regarding different parcels. I only saw one lump sum here. So my recommendation.
Look at the parcels.
I have that on my last page here, but it does not notify specifically which parcels are sale for which amounts of dollars. In looking here, there's $1 figure for the land. My recommendation in bringing this back would be to have a figure specifically for the 2 parcels of land that are clearly for sale, and as well the with that the assessed value, current assessed value, so that we can make a better educated decision than just throwing out the figure and giving it out there. Any other comments from the dais, from the committee here?
And of course, you know, Scott, remaining funds would be returned to the SBF if this was done in a much cheaper way.
Mayor Reynolds?
I don't think there's a person in this room who doesn't hold children and the safety of them in the highest regard. That's why we're all here. We all have servants' hearts, and it's about the children. So there's absolutely no argument there. I'm simply, we have no appraised value that we're looking at here, and I'm familiar with both of these property owners. If you approach them and ask them for a temporary agreement for your ingress, egress, whatever it is, this secondary entrance or exit would be to Mitchell, both of them being very community minded, I'm sure would be on board to allow you in the safety aspect to, on a temporary basis. I've done that on properties of my own, is give temporary easement or access, you know, a year at a time, 6 months at a time. I'm sure that both of these individuals would be in agreement with that. I don't think the purchase of this property is in our best interest at this time. The recreation aspect of this is way too far down the road. Thank you.
Member Pittman?
Well, I agree with what's been said. The safety issue, I think, is probably a new aspect of this grant proposal. I'm just thinking here, maybe it'd be appropriate to have this one brought back with a different concept in terms of providing a second exit and what could be accomplished, along with the needs for whatever CEQA, HEPA, whatever requirements are out there that would have potential conflict with this idea. Maybe we could allow the district to come back at the next meeting with a little different plan for the second exit. I don't think I can see the funding for a full as proposed in the grant project, so maybe we should allow them, the district, to come back with a different plan.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, we're not really opening for...
Understood. I was going to...
But if you have a quick comment.
I was just going to attempt to answer the question why there's not a current appraised value. There was an appraisal done 2 years ago on 2 of the parcels, and I have that information. If it interests this committee, I was prepared to answer that. I think I tried to explain at the last meeting the reason why I did not provide a per parcel breakdown was it's kind of like showing your hand in a poker game. The negotiations have not been done. The direction I received from my board was to bring this to the committee, and there was an attempt to have it be at no cost to the district, and that meant that no appraisal was done. But I have information that's about 2 years old.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a motion for this project? Otherwise, it just dies where it's at.
I make a motion that we decline the property purchase for the Feather River Rec and Park District.
Looking for a second.
There wasn't that motion.
I'll second that.
All right, so this vote is for a decline. And I'll make a mention before I vote that my thoughts are, for the current time being, I would like it updated figures brought back to us specifically for the 2 parcels that are clearly open for sale. So anyway, it's open for voting. And again, a vote for yes means a denial of this project.
Motion carries.
All right, those are all the items we have here. We have steering committee, advisory members, and staff comments. Do we have any comments from our advisory committee?
I did have one quick comment. You know, the discussion about the, you know, not having to spend all the money now and, you know, what's left. I did want to point out that, you know, this certainly, just for the benefit everyone doesn't know, when the new FERC license is issued, this committee will be, if it's a 50-year license, would be receiving $1 million a year for the duration of the license. So I just want to make sure everyone understood that it's not, you know, this isn't all the money the SBF's ever going to see, that's for sure.
Well, and I would like to add that I appreciate that. It's just we're dealing with the dollars we have today.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
and
I understand that.
I look forward to the grant project presenters to know those facts in the future. You guys are looking good to what you've done so far today.
And I'm really looking forward to the billboards on Highway 99.
I do have an update for you if you'd like to hear it.
I would love to hear it.
Liza, would you like to address the committee?
Hello, everybody. I'm Liza Whitmore. I'm the new Public Information Officer for the Department of Water Resources. Again, I realize that this has been an issue that has been in the community for some time. I just started with the Department of Water Resources in July, getting my feet wet. Love the analogies there, and being able to work with the chamber because we have a contract with the chamber for marketing and advertising for Oroville and the Department of Water Resources. There was, as you all know, a change in the executive administration of the chamber, and that happened in September with Wilma's sudden move to Nevada and Eric's coming on board. A lot of that institutional knowledge and everything just kind of went away. So we were ready to proceed on the billboards when that kind of came to a little bit of a stop there. Unfortunately, I was involved in the campfire. I'm a resident of Paradise. I was. And so it was again put on hold. We are starting, however, in 2019, just blasting right through it. We already have our Oroville Field Division doing maintenance assessments, and they're going to be redoing the billboards repairs that are needed for that, probably during the month of February. We expect that the chamber will be presenting to us their marketing plan by the end of the month. The Department of Public Affairs down at DWR will be reviewing that marketing plan, including all of the artwork and everything that they are proposing. Should that be approved quickly, then we will go ahead and authorize the chamber to be able to work with a vendor that does artwork and installations on billboards and be able to get that up ASAP.
Great. And for the future, is there something being put in place to not be in the same predicament that we are today, having completely dilapidated signs and waiting for a year or two for them to be repaired, where there would just be an automatic replacement and updating of the signs on a periodic level, not like when they're falling apart type deal?
That would be definitely the way we would like to work it.
Great.
I have a comment too, that it's kind of a little bit of shame that we couldn't have worked with Caltrans. They put that huge electronic billboard near Neal Road on, Highway 99, and it tells you how long it's going to take to get to the freeways in the Bay Area. I thought to myself, wouldn't it have been nice to have our little billboards turned electronic and be that Caltrans board? If you follow me, Caltrans funded that very expensive electronic billboard at Neal Road, which I haven't got a clue why it's there, because the commuters don't use that. And it says how long it takes you to get to Highway 113. Highway 113. It's like, okay. But wouldn't it be nice if maybe Caltrans could help petition or participate in a funding agreement to turn your signboards into electronic for the freeway? Might be an interesting idea. I know it's never been done before, but
so that the billboards that DWR has would be the information that Caltrans would be able to
traffic/digital billboards.
No, the Caltrans, being that was my previous position, the only information that can be put up is highway information.
Okay.
So there is no combination of
I'm just looking at
community information and highway information.
Yeah.
It would be strictly
the taxpayer dollar spend. It's like, how many boards do we need to have? And I'm still wondering why that one is out on 99, but that's another story.
There you go. Talk to Caltrans about that. I don't work for them anymore.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your report.
You're welcome.
Any other committee advisory reports? Any from staff? Okay. Our next scheduled meeting is, could you reiterate that? It's April 24th, 2019. Without any other comments, or do you have a comment, sir? Me? Yeah, any more comments from the dais? All right, then this meeting is adjourned. The next regular scheduled meeting again is April 24th, 2019 at 2 p.m. Thank you so much for coming.